Hello there and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Martin. This is 2024 Dawn Chorus, so it's the first weekend in May. It's a bit blowy, so we'll see how they come out, and clearly it's past dawn, but I didn't do it any earlier, otherwise you wouldn't have been able to see me. I'm going to play back some of the recordings and see how they come back, and then at the end I'll do a little bit of an explanation and sort of a bit of an insight, if you like, on what the Dawn Chorus is all about. Okay, hope you enjoy it. one of the things I'm often asked with regard to sort of bird watching in general, but bird song in particular. If you go for a walk in the countryside and you're fairly quiet, you may or may not see a few birds. But if you're very quiet, you'll hear far more than you'll see. So they give themselves away by their contact calls or their song or whatever it might be, such as is now. I mean, I can't see very many birds, but I can hear loads and loads. And the question that's often asked, how do you learn which bird song is which? Well, it's a long process. I've been bird watching for many years now, 40 years or more. The way to do it, or the way that I was taught, or it was explained to me how to do it, is pick a handful of species, probably the easy ones. So when I say easy ones, I mean the residents, the ones that are here all year, so that you get plenty of opportunity. So it might be, you know, blackbird, robin, dunnock, song thrush, blue tit and wren, for instance. I'm not sure if that was 6, but anyway. And then listen to them. Listen to them until you're bored silly. It'll get imprinted on your brain, in your memory bank, so that the next time you hear it, it'll be instant. Bird watching is a game of elimination. You work out the things that it's not, and then you end up with what it is. So if you pick 6 species, learn their song through the year, and then the next year you try 6 more. And if you get a little bit adventurous, you might pick sort of a few migrants. So you might have common whitethroat, lesser whitethroat, black-capped willow warbler and sedge warbler, for instance. And then you pick those, and then you can build up your sort of repertoire. Now, I have been told, I can't, it's difficult to explain this, I can't hear or don't notice the phrases that birds have. I pick up the tone, and I can identify them quite quickly from the tone and the pitch of how they sound. And somebody once said to me, you must have a very musical ear. Now, I don't know, I don't play a musical instrument anymore, but I definitely can pick up birdsong or identify birdsong from the pitch and the tone of it, rather than what it's, in inverted commas, saying. And having that so-called musical ear helps enormously. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're tone deaf you can't understand birdsong, but not being tone deaf, I'm not sure how you do teach yourself birdsong in that situation. But it's perseverance, time, and a lot of patience, and you'll get there, and it's so rewarding when you do. Okay, well I found a sort of more sheltered spot where I can sort of sit down and try and explain or maybe make sense of what the dawn chorus is. The dawn chorus is usually, or best experienced anyway, in early May. You can do one in sort of late April, but early May is the sort of traditional time, and I have to say I've tried several times of the year, and early May, the first weekend in May, it always works out to be the best. Obviously dawn chorus, it has to be fairly early in the day as well. I'm not quite as committed as I used to be, so I don't get up, for instance, at the crack of, well, way before dawn, so that I can hear the first birds singing. You know, 3 o'clock in the morning it doesn't do it for me anymore. But you can still get a fantastic experience from about 4:30. Usually by then, a lot of the species are already up and running, as it were. So, but you can still get the wonderful experience, you know, if you have a little bit of a lie-in and don't get up until sort of 4 o'clock. So what is it then? Well, there's a mix of species. There's our resident species, the blackbirds, the robins, song thrushes, dunnocks, and so on. And there's the migratory species, the warblers, common whitethroat, those species that disappear off to the Mediterranean or further afield Africa for the winter. They will have arrived back in early to mid-April, and so they're at it as well. They're in the breeding period, and basically it signifies one of the most important parts of the bird's year, and that's the breeding season. The resident species will have started their breeding season, probably in the end of March, but certainly by April their breeding season is underway, and by the early May they may well have young in the nest. They may already be feeding youngsters, and so what they're doing is they're proclaiming their territory. They're saying, this is my patch, you stay away, to other members of that species. They're also, although they'll probably have a female by early May, they may not, so they could be looking for a female. In lots of cases they could actually be looking for another female. It's not uncommon for some of these species to have 2 or even 3 females at once, and that's to spread the challenge, if you like. So it's a bit of a strange analogy, but they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. So they've got one female, she's busy feeding the brood. He will help to a large extent with that brood in feeding, and throughout the breeding season they will rear, probably unless they get predated, they will rear a full clutch of full brood. If the male's fortunate to have a second female, he may help a little bit with that nest as well, but not nearly as much. His priority is his first female. If he's extremely lucky and has 3 nests on the go, the third female by and large has to really do the job herself, and it's not uncommon, or it's not likely even, that she'll be able to raise all of her brood in that year. As the youngsters get bigger, they require more food. She's not able to feed herself and up to 4 or 5 youngsters, so some of those won't make it, unfortunately, but it means that if any of his nests get predated, there are other offspring that will survive. So that's the resident species. The migratory species are not too dissimilar. Their breeding season starts a little bit later, so because they don't arrive back until early to mid-April, let's say, they're only just starting their breeding season, and they are most definitely proclaiming a territory and saying, you know, this is my patch, I want this is going to provide all the food for my family, etc., etc. They're probably likely to be soliciting for a female, so look at me, I'm lovely, I can sing really well, I'm loud, whatever it might be. And not so often will they be fortunate enough to have a second or even a third female. The breeding season for migratory birds is much shorter than for resident birds. So resident species, as I say, they may start at the end of March and they could still be breeding sort of by the end of September. For migratory species, they need to get going as soon as possible. As soon as they arrive, they're on it and they start singing, they start attracting a female, and they get going, they rear their young, and there's another important aspect to their life which they have to, well, a lot of them anyway, have to do before they return migration, is they have to molt. If you can imagine the flight feathers on some of these birds, you know, that have flown to the sub-Saharan region and back in just a space of a few months, their flight feathers are starting to get quite tatty, in and out of bushes. You know, they've been feeding youngsters in the nest, so they're in and out of bushes all the time. They've flown several thousand miles. Their flight feathers are a bit tatty, and as flight is extremely important to them, they need to molt some of them molt all of their feathers, some of them molt part of their feathers, but they need to molt as soon as they finish breeding. Once they've done that, then they start their journey south again. So by, I don't know, some species the end of July, early August, they've already started drifting south. So the opportunity to have a second brood, a second clutch of eggs, isn't really viable. And some species that do, swallows, could have 2 or 3 broods. They are quite prolific, but often their third brood, if they do have a third brood, that, I should say, in the majority of cases, the youngsters simply don't survive. They don't get big enough to be able to either fly proficiently or sometimes not even leave the nest before it's time for the adults to go. So the adults in those situations will often just fly south in order to make sure they get back to their wintering grounds safely in time, so that the food, because they eat insects, so you know all of our insects disappear in the winter. If they leave it too late, they'll simply starve to death. So by and large, with only 1 or 2 exceptions, migratory species only rear 1 brood. If their first brood gets predated, then they will try again, but they won't rear, or rarely will they rear 2 broods. So the dawn chorus, it's a wonderful, wonderful part of our natural heritage. If you've never tried one, go out in early May and just sit down in a quiet spot and listen, and it's absolutely wonderful. It's one of the best things that the natural world in the UK anyway has to offer, and it's well worth the hassle of getting up in the morning, getting your gear on and going out into the sunshine. You'll experience one of the wonderful part of the day, and it'll be accompanied by some wonderful wonderful bird song.
Right then, well, as I said right at the beginning, this is only really a taster of what the dawn chorus is all about. It can last 2, 3, it can last as long as you like, really. So if you have learnt something from that, or it stimulated you to want to go out and try a dawn chorus, that's absolutely brilliant. If you've enjoyed it, then please subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost anything, but it does help the channel. If you really enjoyed it, then give me a thumbs up, that'd be fantastic. And if you want to know what comes next, ding the old bell. Okay then, I'll see you soon.